Hello everyone and welcome to the Mousiemakes podcast. I'm Helen and I'm a crafty, creative person who just loves to share everything that I do with you. And also I like sharing some of my more philosophical moments, which is what today's episode is really. So it's a lovely bright sunny September day here in Durham in the northeast of England. And the light levels are such that I've chosen a different location, hoping that it'll stay nice and stable and won't be all flashy like, oh, it's terrible last week. Never mind. Anyway, hopefully we'll be all right today. Before I get onto my main topic for today, I just want to mark the occasion of this being episode 50 of the Mousiemakes podcast. I am really proud of myself for having made that many podcasts. I've learned so much along the way, and I don't just mean the technical skills that are needed to create videos, but also I've learned that there's a whole lot of friendship and support in the creative community all around the world. And putting out podcasts to the world on the YouTube platform can make you feel a bit vulnerable, which I suppose you are, but in a way. But in this small Mousiemakes community, there's a warmth and kindness that I never could have imagined. Another positive outcome of making all these podcasts is that it's actually given me the motivation and impetus to do things or learn things that I otherwise might never have quite got around to doing. All the things that I've shared with you have happened firstly because they're things I've wanted to do or have a go at. And it's just that having a regular podcast to fill has given me the incentive to actually take action rather than saying, oh, I'll get around to that someday in the future. A lovely viewer, Karen, who has the Stitches and Jacks podcast, kindly wrote in the comments recently that I've become an influencer, and I was really touched by that. I constantly go back to that famous Emily Dickinson poem, which I've definitely shared with you at least once before, and which I make no apology to share it with you again now. So here it is. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain. In the early days of making podcasts, I told myself that if only ever one or two people watched them and were helped by them in some way, by enjoying a calm atmosphere with a friendly face and a gentle voice, maybe a bit of soothing music, or by hearing some helpful advice or being inspired to do something, then I would be content, knowing that my efforts were worthwhile. And knowing that there's more than one or two of you who enjoy coming to spend a little time in my company is more than I could hope for. So a big heartfelt thank you to everyone who's watching this. I can honestly say that this experience is enriching my life, and hopefully it's touching a few other lives as well. But how are you all doing? I really hope that life is plodding along at a nice steady pace for you. But I know that for some of you, maybe lots of you, life can become a bit too much sometimes. There's never-ending to-do lists with necessary tasks alongside creative projects or other activities. And you can become overstimulated with all the creative ideas that you might be having or seeing other people doing. Or you can be affected by external events or health issues or family worries. So I thought I'd just chat to you today about those moments when we're just feeling completely overwhelmed with all the things that we as human beings might have going on inside our heads and in our lives. And hopefully it might give you some comfort knowing that there are ways of dealing with these feelings, or simply just by knowing that you're not alone. The thing that prompted me to chat about it today is that a couple of weeks ago I had a day where I just felt completely stuck and all mixed up. I could best describe the feeling as having a head filled with a tangled mass of yarn. It was so muddled that at first I couldn't even begin to find any of the ends to try and untangle any of the mess. So for a while, I just sat quietly in the garden with a cup of tea, and I did nothing. I was really unsure of how to get myself together to do anything at all. I sat there thinking of nothing in particular and just allowing thoughts to swirl about aimlessly for a while. Then after a bit of time had gone by, I just knew that I needed to turn to my bullet journal. Well, at first, all I wanted to do was to draw a picture of what was inside my head. But once I'd got that out of my system, I started to think of what I would do if a friend came and told me that they felt like there was a tangled mass of yarn inside their head. How would I try to help them? Having a bullet journal means that I've got a special place for recording all sorts of things, and on that particular day it seemed just the right place to turn to. I wanted a record of my thought processes so that I'd have something to look back on and maybe help me if I felt the same way again in the future. By writing down my advice for a friend, I knew that I would be able to read it and follow the advice myself. So the first piece of advice was to give reassurance that the feelings of overwhelm would pass. Now, I want to say at this point that not all of my feelings of overwhelm were negative. There were some lovely reasons for feeling overwhelmed, such as knowing that so many YouTube viewers and Instagram friends have been making such kind, friendly and encouraging comments about my little creative journey. And also that I'm making some lovely new friends along the way, as well as staying connected with existing friends and family. Having access to lots of wonderful inspiration on these social media platforms is also quite overwhelming at times. And it's easy to become creatively overwhelmed, having so many ideas going around in your head and not wanting to lose any of them. So that's not bad, it's just that there's so much there in my head sometimes. And then just having the realisation that I live somewhere safe and secure, and I have the luxury of free time to carry on with my creative pursuits, that's quite overwhelming too. There were all sorts of other less positive emotions and topics tangled up in that mass of yarn too. Feelings of anxiety and guilt and fear and disappointment. So my second piece of advice to my hypothetical friend was to just start writing down all the things that were currently muddled together. And as soon as I started following that advice, I began to feel a little calmer, soothed by the gentle sound and colours of my pens and pencils. Although as I wrote, some of the sentences made me feel really emotional and the occasional tear dropped down onto my page. But one positive outcome was that the writing process began to tease some of the tangled strands of yarn apart, and I realised that the thing that had triggered that massive wave of overwhelm was the fact that I'd spent an entire morning getting a new idea for a little story out of my head and onto paper, when I really should have been busy with other things. It made me feel guilty that I was doing creative stuff rather than other tasks on my to-do list. So that was the next thing that I recorded in my bullet journal. My next piece of friendly advice was to find some relevant, helpful quotes, and having found a few, I started writing them into my bullet journal. I like the slow process of writing such things down and sometimes decorating them or colouring in lettering, because it gives me time to really take in what the words are saying and I can properly appreciate their meaning. Once I'd done that, the jumble of things in my mind started to relax a bit and the separate strands were becoming more visible. I found that I was able to put the thoughts into compartments and, in fact, without really thinking about it, I drew myself a page of boxes, which to me was a visible demonstration that I was retaking control of my mind, much more under control than the pages of swirling sentences that I'd written to begin with. The other thing that I felt moved to do at that moment was to write a poem to explain how I was feeling. It's not a great work of literature, but I thought I'd read it to you anyway, because I'm sure that some of you will identify with those feelings. Tangled. My mind is like a tangled mass of yarn. The jumbled thoughts wind themselves around each other, and when I try to tease out and separate all the strands, the knots become more firmly fixed, the tangles more twisted and enmeshed. So I plonk the muddle down, stop fiddling with it. It only makes it worse when I'm feeling this tense and anxious. I move away from the tangled mess to come back later, when calm and patience has returned, and meanwhile focus on just one simple thing. So just to sum up, I thought I'd finish with a few hints that might help you if you start suffering from overwhelm. Firstly, remind yourself that the feeling will pass. You won't feel like that forever, even if it feels like that at the time. Secondly, try thinking about how you might help a friend if they told you that they were feeling overwhelmed. For me, it's a good way of looking at a problem from the outside. Thirdly, consider putting your jumbled thoughts down on paper in any way you like, even if it's just a scribbly mess to begin with. Any notebook or scrap of paper will do. You don't have to have a bullet journal. Consider looking for some positive quotes or affirmations and perhaps spend a little slow time writing them out and making them look pretty, if you like doing that kind of thing. Give yourself permission to take a break. Do something comforting and undemanding for a while. Read a book, pick up a simple craft project, go for a little walk, anything that doesn't require too much effort. Only when you start to feel calmer can you start thinking about how to organise your thoughts and begin to move forward. And finally, be kind and patient with yourself. To round off today, I thought I'd read you a poem that my yoga teacher read out at the end of our class last week when we were doing the relaxation part of the session. The poem's all about accepting all the different emotions that enter our bodies, being able to acknowledge them and be safe in the knowledge that each of these emotions is there for a good reason. The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is like a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honourably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So that's me for today. I really hope that you found some of that helpful at least. And I'll be back soon with more of my usual chat and sharing my projects and activities with you. But yes, I'm going to leave it there for today. So take good care of yourself, keep busy, and I will see you again soon. Bye.